Hi, everybody, and welcome back for another podcast episode of Asira Magazine. My name is Emre Şentürk, and I'm hosting, they say actually a podcast show, but Asira Magazine is not really for entertainment, but rather for education and analysis of political topics. And this is what I was reflecting on the other day. I was browsing through the articles that I publish on asira.com, and I was thinking, how is my approach to things? And there are some discussions that I have with friends and colleagues and family about the various topics that we have here. And what I often encounter is, especially like in the private realm, is that people tend to misunderstand what I'm saying or not value the input, the analytical input that I'm bringing to the discussion that I would actually think is warranted. So what do I mean by that? If we are talking, for example, with friends or with family members about a certain conflict or a certain development in the world, oftentimes, I don't feel that my point of view is being recognized as extremely significant, and basically, oftentimes, and this is my perception, the key to understanding the matter, and from understanding the matter, we can also derive how these things can be solved. And this naturally led me into reflecting my approach. So I went back and read my articles again. I was also reflecting on how I'm talking in those situations and how I'm presenting my thoughts and analyses. I refuse to use the word opinion on that, because on political matters, I'm really not a person who thinks an opinion is going to get you far. It's rather, to observe and analyze the things with the tools that you learn from political science, and this is what I'm trying to give people back. But nonetheless, I needed to be a bit more reflective on my approach. And what I found out, or what was striking, is that I'm often far away from the everyday dealings within a topic. It might be the Israel-Palestine conflict, where I'm not discussing like the particularities on the ground that are happening there. And for example, the riots in France last year in summer, for example. Then we have the developments in Iran. Last year, it was in February last year, where there were uprisings in Iran, but also Ukraine, Russia conflict, and so on and so forth. So, or also the Afghanistan situation. There was also an article from 2021. Whenever I'm dealing with those things, I found out, or I just the emphasis of my articles is, as I said, far away from the dealings on the ground and what is actually happening there. And I think that is a bit too abstract, because there are emotions involved when things happen and they are portrayed in the news, and you deal with them as they happen. For example, the Israel-Palestine conflict, right? It is a very urgent situation. You see it on the television, you read it in the news, and you want to understand what is going on there, right? How many people were killed? What kind of bombs did they use? Which territories were lost or gained, depending on which side you're looking at. And my approach is far away from that. My approach is to see the underlying structural things that cause this conflict to light up again, or in other contexts. When I'm looking at, for example, let's say political change. There was an article last year, the Turkish elections. There might be concepts like racism and capitalism that I'm also looking at from a very abstract and kind of detached point of view. And this is not to say that either way, like one way or the other is correct and the other one is not. This is definitely not what I'm saying. But it is something that I recognize is very prominent in my writing and also in my approaching political matters. And I just wanted to explain to you why I am approaching things like that and where do I think the value of approaching things in this way is. And to me, it is, first of all, the argument that if something happens on a daily basis, like the micro developments within a conflict or a larger development into something, I don't think that those micro developments actually have much weight in or do not have much value in letting you understand what is really going on there. Also, they do not help you to actually form sustainable responses to things. So if you take, for example, the larger development, in the United States, for example, that the whole world is actually looking at, the issue with, the different genders and the shift to the liberal left side, within society. It is not that small actions, like, for example, a person gets beaten up or there has been protests somewhere or a minor law has been passed or a school teacher got suspended because of that. These are not the developments that make up the whole larger dynamic. And these do not help us to understand how the different camps and actors interact with each other. It is rather the structural arrangement and the different kind of factors that influence society in a way that it came to this situation, and from the trend and the structural givings of the situation, we can derive how it's going to develop further. And if you are against it, you can from that derive what you need to do, what you can change, basically, in order to go against this development. So again, very abstract, but to make it more specific on this gender thing is, we would have to see how the socioeconomic composition changed over time in the United States and how that affected consumption behavior. We will also, because there is this structural dynamic that when a nation is becoming more and more wealthy, right, over time, and is richer and richer, more social classes access consumption levels of luxury goods, and once they achieve those levels, right, the immaterial fulfillment, or non-fulfillment of those people becomes more apparent. If you're socioeconomically disadvantaged, your primary concern is obviously to work to get a good life and to sustain your living and your family and so on and so forth. Once you've done that, you want to improve your material life. And once you've done that, and this is the situation that I'm talking about, you access a level where you start to buy luxury goods, this and that. This doesn't add to your self-fulfillment. These are just material add-ons that are nice to have, but don't really fulfill you. And at that point, when capitalism has reached a point, where more socioeconomic classes can access those goods, the emptiness on the immaterial side, like the normative side, becomes clearer. And this leads or makes people vulnerable to kind of go or to those dynamics of changing genders, this and that. So this is a very important factor that we need to look at, but nobody's talking about it because the narrative is always that they want to re-educate our children or into the other direction. Yeah, the right is so restrictive. They are not. They're not very humanitarian. But the argument doesn't make any sense. So this is just one factor that I'm talking about with the socioeconomic development. On the other side, to make it again more specific, obviously you also have ideological developments that are taking place. If we are thinking about the global scale, right, what separated the United States or other white communities from the rest of the world was always the economic success, and with less economic discrepancy between the global north and the global south, the need for immaterial differences in order to still substantiate the otherness, and basically artificially constructed superiority towards the global south needs to be upheld with the change of some certain notions, such as the gender thing. And these are many important structural factors that lead to certain dynamics. And this is how I approach things. It is not important to know whether a school shooting has occurred here or there in the United States, to name a different example. The problem lies somewhere else. And in order to discover that problem, you need to take a couple of steps back and look at the different factors that are going on in society and how politics and interest groups make use of those developments. As I said, it is not the fanciest and it's not the most emotional approach that I have to these things. And a lot of people also gave me feedback saying, how can you be so neutral and so emotionless when talking about great wars that are happening right now? And then I say, well, it doesn't help us to be emotional about those things. I can't obviously. Do you think I like seeing children and people murdered and houses bombed or something like that? Of course not. Schools shut and whatnot. Do you think I enjoy that? No, of course not. But what does it add to the discussion or to the solving of the problem? What does it add? How can I get to a solution when I'm emotional as well? What does it add to it? Of course I can sit in front of the TV and cry. When I see those pictures, my heart is also torn apart. But how does that help us? How does that help us? It just blurs our ability to properly analyze where those situations are coming from, and therefore it also blurs our ability to judge how we can find solution to those things. And I see my role and this is the whole vision of this magazine. I found this magazine not to participate in this emotional opinion building, basically. I want to give you tools or structured insights into what is going on from my perspective or from my knowledge, right? From the logics and the way I derive information from the situations, in order for you to have a clearer picture and make more sound analytical assessments. I'm not here to feed into the emotional state and throw around some slogans and dogmatic statements. This is not going to help us in no situation. And this is why I take those steps back. And when we talk about those things, and when I start to use those abstract terms, socioeconomic development and social discrepancy here and there, I know that this sounds boring, and politics, lives from like the heat, right, that we have in our discussions. But believe me, this is not doing any good to finding solutions to what we try to do. And because of that, Because of that, I'm going to stick to this approach. I'm going to stick to the boring approach of deconstructing the dynamics and looking at the interests and putting factors together, also looking at human behavior and incentives here and there. I'm going to continue to do that. And the reason is because I believe that this is the approach how we should structure political discourse. This is also what I believe politicians should do. This is what I believe will bring us forward. And then this is also what I believe is political education is. Political education is not exactly knowing when which law was introduced and which catastrophe happened where and how many casualties were there. What difference does it make if there's a school shooting where 100 children die, or 110 or 90? How does that affect our ability or our the quality of the solution that we're trying to find to this problem? Obviously, and I can just repeat myself, obviously it is bad, and obviously we don't want to see it. But what difference does it make? The same applies to the whole Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement, the BLM movement. What difference does it make that we have yet another name printed on T-shirts and on banners? And this is something, I'm talking about these things from Europe. Imagine what kind of waves the situation has made. People in Europe and in other continents are protesting against police violence against black people, even though they don't have this problem in their own nation. What is that all about? What I'm trying to say is there are reasons why people should deal with the emotions of political developments, but not with the political developments themselves. Because by going on the street and, waving around banners, and this can be any other topic as well, it is not about the topic itself. We see it with Israel-Palestine, and I talked about it. I can just repeat myself. The hashtag Free Palestine. It is just to keep your emotions busy. You feel involved in this conflict. You feel like you're adding to the solution by just posting a hashtag Free Palestine, and that's it. They don't want you to. The politicians who have the interest to support Israel, or the politicians that have an interest in supporting the police and the supremacy of whites over blacks, and politicians with any sorts of interest, they want you to deal with the emotions and keep yourself busy with those emotions. And that is it's very strange, I admit, but that is the reality. You feel involved in the Israel-Palestine conflict because you are able to post things on that conflict, right? But they don't want you to go to organizations. They don't want you to organize lobby groups. They don't want you to organize think tanks. They don't want business to support those think tanks. They don't want you to go into politics. They don't want you to further political education. They don't want that. It's enough that you post your Free Palestine hashtag and then you're out of it. And I'm just using this as an example. We can talk about anything else. It doesn't matter. We can talk about the war in Russia. We can talk about the gun laws in the United States. We can talk about immigration in Europe. We can talk about immigration in Turkey. We can talk about economic crisis in Turkey. We can talk about coups in Central Asia, in the Turkic countries. We can talk about the genocide of Uyghur Turks in China. We can talk about any topic. We can talk about the coup d'etat in Sudan. We can talk about Yemen. It does not matter. Politicians who have an interest in those conflicts and situations to continue. Let's take, for example, the Uyghur genocide in East Turkestan. Well, China doesn't have an interest that people start, institution building, lobbying, and educating them properly, and building capacity. Imagine what would happen if people were just emotionlessly trying to gather and look for a solution. They kind of pool money and start to build strong, influential think tanks that go around and educate other people. The word spreads around. They lobby the Turkic politicians to go against China more aggressively in diplomatic ways and maybe military ways. They don't want that. They just want you to post about it, talk about it, and that's that. And maybe I'm guilty as well for just talking about it and not being able to properly make institution building or create think tanks pool funds for those kind of things as well. Maybe I'm guilty as well. I'm not denying that. But what is true is that I understood that the way media presents things to you and want you to deal with those very small things in conflicts and developments is just to keep your emotions busy, that you feel involved. And once you feel involved, the topic is over for you. You just want to, this is just entertainment. And this is what I said in the beginning. Politics is not entertainment. This is not a show. It is serious, and when we talk about serious stuff, we need to get serious about the analysis. Just reflect it. Do you really care about the political solution to certain things, or you just like chatting about it with your colleagues at work and family and friends? Do you really want to have the solution, and are you ready to invest energy into developing yourself and going about senseful measures, to achieve this change and enforce it? Or are you just comfortable with expressing negative emotions and just ranting about things? Are you about the comfort, or do you really care about what is going on? And that is, if you are honest with yourself, oftentimes it is just the idea of, or like pretending to want certain things to end. And when they end, they're replaced by other things. But do we really care about solving certain things and having sustainable solutions to them? I don't think so. And this is why I'm taking those steps back. I try to analyze those things from an abstract perspective, because the more you move away to identify the problem and to solve it, the more sustainable the solution is going to be. If you're just looking at the micro developments of a conflict and find solutions to them, those solutions do not prevent later recurrences of those micro atrocities that we're talking about. So this is what I've been thinking, and I try to be reflective of my approach as well. I know that it is boring and it's oftentimes confusing, and sometimes it doesn't make sense, how things are connected when we're moving so far away. Sometimes, and this is no joke, sometimes political developments, they have their roots a couple of hundred years back in some apparently meaningless developments. And to make those connections sometimes seems a bit far-fetched, right? And it might not be that they are very relevant today, but in order to understand the root of certain things, you have to go back that far. I know it's boring, it's history, and it doesn't make sense, and it's cooler to watch some fighter jet throwing bombs around, because this is the direct thing that we can understand. We see the picture, we see that there's conflict, we know something is bad. There's the direct connection, there's the direct translation of meaning through pictures. But in abstract terms, It's boring. I know that. I'm reflecting that. And as I said, maybe I'm just also too comfortable, sitting and now talking about those things and making very abstract assessments on that. Maybe it's also, not right on my part. But as far as I can see it, if you really want to be politically educated and want to use this education to do something, and to carry on the word and, use these things in arguments, you have to take those steps back. Get away from the daily business of politics. These are transactional, operational things that actually have no meaning in the bigger picture. The bigger picture is what is important. Let's just think back at to the Syrian civil war. Name me one event over those 10 years that, if we didn't have this event, and the whole chain of events, that would have ended the war, the civil war, and would have changed the course of it. Nothing. There's nothing. It's just the overarching dynamic. And when we look at the overarching dynamics, then we can make sense of things. It's that simple. Well, it's not simple. That's the whole point. It's boring, and it's not flashy, and it's not, entertaining. And there we are. Do we really engage with political topics because we want to be informed or entertained? I'll leave this answer up to you. And this is something that you need to reflect on for yourself. Thank you for listening, and until next time.